Welcome back to the next episode of the eCom Growth Show. I am your host, Daniel Coleman. With me, I've got Jessica Wright, who has been in this industry for quite some time. Jessica, welcome to the show. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and give the listeners a reason to listen to you.
So I am Jessica Wright. Currently, I am president of AO2 Management. We're a full service omni-channel e-commerce agency. My background, though, I've been in the industry about 18 years, started in toy manufacturing, and that's how I kind of got into understanding the things that I now understand and hopefully am somewhat of an expert in with regard to Amazon and e-commerce.
Right on. I like it. Okay, cool. Short and sweet and to the point. Cool. You've got a little bit of pedigree in the space. So, all right, let's talk about I'm just going to dive straight into the questions. I like not beating around the bush. So, are you ready to roll?
Let's do it.
All right, sweet. So, why do you believe branding is the future of selling on Amazon, even for sellers that are starting out with just the white label products? Why should anyone be worried about branding?
Yeah, I mean, like short answer, it is becoming more difficult for resellers to be able to list products that they don't own, right? But there's a lot that goes into that. So I think a combination of how Amazon has reacted to the counterfeit, the IP issues, all of that has resulted in tools to protect brands. And the resulting factor of protecting the brands just naturally happens to be gating more listings from just anyone being able to sell those products. And I also believe that, margins are just getting tighter and tighter in the e-commerce space. So it can be really difficult to kind of do that true retail arbitrage that people used to do and be able to go out and just, buy a product off the shelf and sell it on Amazon, because now prices on Amazon are often already cheaper than what you'll find it in the store. So finding something on sale in a store is not going to afford you that same advantage.
Okay. And what's changed recently for these resellers? Uh, I know the answer to this question, but you probably have a little bit more knowledge on this than I do because this is not really my world anymore. But what's going on? Why do we have, well, let me actually, lends well into the next question. What doors are closing for resellers on Amazon and what's causing that shift?
Yeah, so protecting the brands is really what is causing that shift. And that's
Uh,
causing, a lot of the doors to close. So brand registry on Amazon being enhanced, which really has been like almost 5 years now since they kind of started those initial enhancements to brand registry, but rolling out more tools like Project Zero and things to truly protect IP. That's a big piece of it. And as a result, like I said, the brands or listings are kind of getting more gated. So if you are not the brand owner, if you don't have the right UPC code for it, if you don't have the credentials that you need, if you can't prove how you sourced the product, now you have to jump through all of those hoops where previously you could just put a listing up on Amazon. You didn't have to have a G10 for it. So even if it was already listed, you could make your own listing for it and sell it alongside the legit listing for the product. And so Amazon has really started cracking down on those G10s and requiring that if you're selling a product that you use an identifier that is, universally recognized. And that's making it much easier for them to connect the dots between the brand's, owned listing and, reseller pop-up copycat listings. And that's something, that Amazon's been trying to combat for a long time and was never should have been allowed per their standards for listings, but was easy to get around when they weren't requiring GSINs.
Yeah, well, and I mean, let's going back to the early days of Amazon, the whole idea was if you sold this too, you could sell it too, right? That was one of the founding principles of Amazon is rather than the eBay model, if you're selling this product, well, you can sell on this product too. It's like they've got that button there that's like, do you sell this as well, or do you have one to sell? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
but keep it in one place, and we'll update it and we'll put the best stuff on there. Now it's really like there was an evolution in the beginning, and then there was an evolution a few years later. Now we've gotten, the current evolution is a lot more locked down and a lot more brand centric and by intent. It's being brand centric by intent, but not necessarily being reseller averse by intent. It's, we're doing these things for the brand, and as a result, it's stopping some of these things, because I think Amazon would be happy to take that money from whoever they can get that
Yeah.
15% commission from.
Yeah, Amazon will take your money. Your money's just as green as anybody else's money, which is why we've seen certain other types of sellers come in droves to Amazon.
Which I think
Um,
is another one of the, the drawbacks for resellers, is those certain types of other products or sellers who have shown up.
yeah, for sure. Uh, One thing that you mentioned a moment ago is G10. Can you go ahead and define that? I know that a lot of people listening to this that are newer are not going to know what that is.
Yeah, and I'll probably get it wrong, and my friends at GS1 US will probably hear this and say something, but generally speaking,
Sorry, Shane.
G10s G10s can, it's a group of numbers that represent a product. It's basically your barcoding for your product. And G10s can be UPCs, they can be ISBNs, they can be EANs. It just depends on where you're selling and what type of product, what the name of that individual code is going to be, but that's that universally recognized barcode that identifies what your product is. And so if you're a brand that's been around for a long time, you might already own a prefix with GS1, which means every UPC that starts with 67143 and every combination that can come after that, that belongs to your brand. And no one else can use those. And every product in your catalog has that same prefix and stylization of the numbers. But then if you are a smaller brand or you're just getting started, you're probably just buying onesie twosies or buying, a group of them from GS1, not from anyone
Ideally.
else.
Yeah,
Not from
ideally.
anyone
Okay.
else.
Yeah, let me take us back roughly a decade or so when you needed to at first you didn't even need a UPC code of any sort to list products on Amazon. Amazon just assigned you what is their universal product identifier called an ASIN. Now, fast forward to 2014, 15, something like that if I remember correctly. They said, "Oh, you can now have your UPC as the identifier. We'll assign you an ASIN, but you can use this UPC code." Well, I went out to eBay and I bought 1,000 of them for like $10. Well, you can't do that anymore, folks. In fact, I shouldn't have done that in the first place, but I didn't know any better at the time. But GS1 is the company that you go to get a dedicated identifier for your product. It means it's yours, it's your product, no one else can use it. That does not mean, however, that there are people utilizing like retired UPC codes and stuff like that. I even have a product today that's online that's based on one of those. It's the right way to go these days is to go to GS1. You used to have to buy them in blocks of 10, but they've recently updated that so where you can just get one now. I think it's $10 or something like that.
Mhm.
And maybe is that a yearly cost? Do you remember? Is that yearly?
Yeah, I believe you have to renew annually to keep those. Otherwise, they do get recycled and used for other products. And the same is true whether you own a prefix there, or whatever block of them you have. You only are basically leasing them from GS1.
Right. Yeah. It's like a website, you don't actually own that website. You're leasing it from GoDaddy or HostGator or whatever. All right, sweet. So that answers that. Let's go on to question number 3 here. Let's say a brand's ready to start selling on Amazon. What are the must-dos? What do they have to do before they even create a listing?
So number one would normally be go get your G10s, but we already covered that. But it's
Yeah.
so important now. I'll talk about it just briefly again. Like
Hmm.
Dan had said, you have to have these now, and you have to get them from the right source. So, um, like you said, you bought yours on eBay back then. the right way to do it is this way now, but there are still resellers out there. So just make sure that you are getting those in advance and you're getting them from GS1, or there are now, which is confusing, like actual, I don't want to call them authorized resellers, but partners. So like AO2 is a partner. Dana, I'm not sure if you are or not,
No,
where you could
I'm
go
actually the
bookmark
so
that.
yeah, I will. So Shane Morris, that's his last name. Yeah, Shane
Yes.
Morris from GS1. I met them the very first time that they came to a trade show. They had no idea what they were doing. They did not cater anything at all to Amazon sellers. But Amazon at that stage had just announced that we were required to have GS1 codes, or codes specifically from them. So they've done a lot. They had no partner program. They had no
Hmm.
newsletter. They had no nothing. And so they've come a long way in the, I don't know, what is it, 6 years maybe since I met them, something like that, maybe 5. And like, if you were a seller and you had 1 or 2 products, you had to pay for 10. So it was $100 a year, or 150 a year, whatever it was at that time. So they've come a long ways. But no, I just refer to you or them. Honestly,
Yeah,
I have no interest in like
being
trying
that
to
partner.
yeah, make $2 a year on my clients.
No, the reason that, I suggest it, you can go straight through just one. If you're not sure what you're doing, though, if you're a brand new brand, and you're working with a provider who is a partner, or you can contact me, or you can contact Dana and get in touch with me. But just because if you're not sure what you're doing, even if you're going direct, you might still do it wrong. So making sure you understand what you need to do, that you need to have one per product, and all of the things that are involved to get that start set up right out of the gate. So that's usually number 1 or 2 of what I suggest, and then the other number 1 or 2, and they can be interchangeable with Amazon specifically, is brand registry. Go ahead and do your brand registry before you start trying to make listings or do anything else on Amazon. And the reason for that is, um, the way you want to list your brand, how you want to designate your brand name is critical to your brand registry. So let's say you start setting up listings and you've put your brand name in with one naming convention, there's a space or not a space, or, capital letters or some kind of punctuation or something. And then you go to do your brand registry, and your actual like word mark or image mark is different than how you set up your listings. Now, those listings are not actually attached to the brand that you have protection on. And changing brand names along with changing UPCs, it's one of the most difficult things you can do on Amazon once things have been established. So, parts 1 and 2, GS1 and brand registry.
Cool. What else? Anything else that's like super important?
Yeah, I mean, for you as a seller, obviously getting into Amazon for the first time is expensive and there's a lot of unknowns. So, along with that brand registry, there's a lot of new seller incentives. So, there are things that you can get money back on or just save fees completely if you join this new seller incentives program and enroll ASINs as they come out. So just making sure that you're always taking a look at what things are available for new to FBA is one of the things. New sellers on Amazon. There's a lot of things out there. So just make sure you're doing your research or finding the right partners to help you through this, whether it's a podcast like this that you listen to and get your tips from. But there's so much knowledge in this space, and there are so many people who are giving out free advice. That's probably the biggest thing, actually. Before you even do any of the other stuff I already mentioned, scrap that and just start, looking at Amazon forums and LinkedIn and all the spaces you can get free access to knowledge and people who have that knowledge, and start building that, your own kind of dictionary of what's important to your type of brand on Amazon,
Yeah, I'm gonna slightly disagree with you on that because
because there's so much bad information too.
yes,
It's
exactly.
fair.
So YouTube University is not necessarily a degree you want to spend the time getting. So there are certain industry professionals like Jessica, like myself, but one of the groups that I urge people to join because it's free is Carlos's group, the Wizards of eCom. It's free to join. It's the members there have got a wealth of information, and it's relevant to today.
Yeah. I think that's
Um,
a very fair and important distinction. When you're in the space and you know the right people,
yes.
you just assume that everyone's going to make those same connections. Like go to LinkedIn and follow the right people, but how do you
Yeah.
know? You
Yeah.
don't know unless you're already kind of integrated.
Yeah. And you and I have been in this industry for more than a decade.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
you're approaching 2 decades.
It's getting
I'm
close.
15 years on Amazon. So yeah, yeah, I'd say there's a few people that I'd recommend for beginners. Wizards of eCom. If you're amateur and you can stay in Wizards of eCom, of course, but also there's Inner Circle with Brandon
Hmm.
Young, right?
Hmm.
So that is like another great wealth of knowledge. If you're professional, then there's MDS. So you can go into the $1 million sellers group, and they represent something like $12 billion a year on annual sales on Amazon. Some, no big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, no big
Definitely a
deal.
group you want to, you aspire to be a part of.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. You have to be a seven-figure seller to be in that group, and I'm a partner of all of those. So, if a- anybody can reach out to me, I charge $350 an hour, but conveniently for you, I always forget to invoice. So you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to make introductions. You can also reach out to Jessica. She's extraordinarily well connected in this industry as well. But people like us, we thoroughly enjoy helping people. So if you need help, you can reach out.
I know it's so funny.
All
I was
right.
talking to somebody over the weekend that I used to work with, and they're getting ready to start a business. And I said, feel free to reach out when you have questions. He's like, of course, and I'll compensate you for your time. And I'm like, I just love talking about this stuff.
Yeah. Same.
It's really, and I enjoy helping people or brands get started on their journey or fix a problem that they've created or just move it forward. So it's
Yeah. I'm exactly the same way. The thing is that with the network that you and I have amassed over the years and the experience that we have in this space, you can fast track
hmm
a lot of mistakes. You know, I have spent countless thousands of dollars. I don't want to say tens of thousands because I hope it's that much. I hope it's not that much, I mean,
hmm
but, uh, I really don't know, but I definitely spent a lot of money learning mistakes.
hmm
Uh, People like you and I can bypass all of those mistakes and go, "Don't bother doing this. Come meet this person," and there's a lot of monetary value in that. Um, and like we said, we offer this advice for free, so
hmm
just reach out. It's totally fine.
Yep.
All right, sweet. Well, thanks for making yourself available for people to help. By the way, how do they get a hold of you?
So LinkedIn is usually the easiest and the best. If you're on LinkedIn, I am much more responsive there. I could give you my email, but I am always tragically behind on my email. It's an action item every day on my to-do list. And I asked, I don't have a part-time assistant. I don't have a full-time dedicated assistant. It's like, I might need your help with my email soon. And she said, it's fine. Just delete them all. If it's important, they'll come back. And I was like, maybe I don't need your help with my email.
Uh, I do. I've got a full-time executive assistant. One of her jobs is to help me with my emails, and I'm still behind on them.
Yeah, it's tough. So yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. Connect, send me a message. I will, instantly get back. That's always a tab that's open on my laptop.
Cool. And for me, I'm behind on both, so just reach out to Jessica.
Perfect.
All right, cool. So let's see here. Um, it, oh, I'm curious about this one. Is there still room for new brands on Amazon, or is it just a pile of knockoffs and mega corporations?
There is still room for new brands, and this is where the branding piece of things really comes into play. Like consumers are really interested in 2025 in connecting with their brands. So if you're looking to build a brand right now, this is where you really need to there needs to be something about your brand that people want to engage with on a regular basis. And I don't mean that it's like a consumable thing, but something that they're going to your website, they're going to your social medias, they're, looking for new content and constantly trying to connect with your brand. So that's where, brand ambassadors or UGC is really important. All of these things across all of e-commerce that establishes who you are, what the intent is behind your brand, how people should use it, how people are using it, what kind of like consumer incentives there are, or what kind of ways you're giving back. All of those things are what is driving, that's what drives consumers to a new brand in 2025 and keeps them with you moving forward. So I think it's less easy now to just white label something and throw it up on Amazon and get a bunch of eyes on it organically. Um, but I think if you really work on, and you could start that way, there's absolutely room to start that way, but that's just a foot in the door. You're going to start getting some sales. You're probably going to spend, more in advertising to get recognition, but start there and then start building what your brand really is. Establish, your Facebook and your Instagram and connect with some creators and do those things that will make your brand mean something to people beyond this is just, a brush that I'm going to use on my hair.
Yeah, cool. And let me add to this a little bit. So this is one of those situations where we can fast track a lot for you guys. So what Jessica just said is the culmination of years of change on Amazon.
Mhm.
So it used to be go to Alibaba. Before that, it was actually just find manufacturers in China. But it used to be go to Alibaba, find a product that's selling on Amazon, order it, ship it, sell it. Right now, what's happened is the categories and the products typically this is not a blanket statement, but by and large what's happened is those categories, those products, those electronics, those mirrors, whatever, there are now so many other people doing that exact same thing that it's not sustainable and it's become a race to the bottom. So you have a mirror, this manufacturer sells the same mirror to 50 other people. Now the top 5 are vying for the same spot with just a different brand name, slightly different pricing, and the consumer is confused going, why is this one $5 more than this one? It looks exactly the same to me. I don't know. And so what happens is the person that can afford to pay the most for advertising to get up to the top and has the most reviews is the one that wins. But eventually the price starts climbing, not climbing, but descending down, and you now have to pay all of your profit into advertising just to get seen because you've got so many competitors. So that's why Jessica is putting so much emphasis on building a brand, because if you build a brand, you get brand loyalty.
Mhm.
So if I make sunglasses, right, I don't want to only sell these. I'll use a perfect example. These are actually not those sunglasses, but Knock Around.
Mhm.
Great brand. They do nice solid sunglasses to like 20 to 50 bucks. I used to spend hundreds of dollars on my Oakley sunglasses, and it's completely unnecessary today. That's a great brand. They have tons of colors, tons of models, but they could have just gone, "Hey, this manufacturer makes good sunglasses. Let's just do these. Awesome. Hey, these guys make good koozies. Let's go make koozies." There's a 30% margin on them. But if you build a brand, you get those people that you get recurring business. Um, Here's another example. My current brand that I sell on Amazon, supplements. I'm not going to tell you what supplement because I'm actually embarrassed at the listing for being in the space for so long. We won't get into that. But I don't even need to do advertising. I don't pay for advertising on Amazon because I have brand loyalty. And the my repeat business is something like 60%. I can't remember if it's 60 or 40, but it's one of the two. It's I either have a 40% recurring purchase or 60%, and I'm pretty sure it's 60. And I've got one client, because you can tell this, at least you could up until recently on Managed by Stats, you could see you repeat buyers. I have someone that spent like 15 grand with me over, I've been selling this product for thir 12 or 13 years on Amazon. 15 grand, like, that's what you want.
It's
That's brand
substantial.
loyalty.
Exactly. That's
Yes.
exactly what you're trying to do, and you've been doing it for years, which is amazing. A lot of people are just starting to figure out that this is what they need to do to keep going. And there are a couple things
Yeah.
that are going on right now in our space that is going to be a little bit of a disruptor. Again, tariffs are a question. Does that open the door for more resellers or more, low price stuff again? But also, the removal of the de minimis exemption, right? How does that impact what is happening with, especially the Chinese brands, but anything just coming direct from factory overseas? TBD how that's actually going to play out, how what's actually gonna settle, what's not, how that will impact things, but regardless, this is the direction you should be going. It doesn't matter how much little disruption happens, I think this is the future any way you look at it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, build a brand. I mean, I've always said it's you need to diversify. I used to say, "Hey, you need to diversify off of Amazon." I still believe that very heavily. But you probably also need to diversify your manufacturing. So if you can get the same product made in Vietnam or in Mexico or wherever, I mean, I've got products made in Pakistan.
Mhm.
I don't even manufacture in China anymore. I have my products manufactured in the US and in Pakistan. Is that it? Yeah, I think that's it. And then I'm looking into Japan and Germany. So, it's I the tariffs the tariffs out of China don't affect me, but I did that a long time ago because I'm I guess you could say I'm slightly lazy. I didn't like the amount of work that it took to ensure that I was getting my manufacturers doing the right product and not screwing me over, even though I've been to China, visited factories. It was a lot easier for me to just go, hey, this is what I want to order, send them the PO. They build it, they send it, I receive it, that's it. It's so much easier for me.
Yeah, it's so interesting, I think, from one product to the next because when I started in this industry, we manufactured all of our in the toy industry, toy pianos, toy instruments in the US. And we slowly from, like, I'd say, like, 2006 to 2009, and I started in 2008, we're moving, product manufacturing from the US to China, and we had a lot of success with that because we actually had significantly less defects and issues with our products in these factories that could just, like, replicate things very easily versus having people kind of, doing things by hand in the US. So that was a
Mm.
massive time saver and issue saver for us. Now, of course, there were other things that came up on the flip side, and we did have to get, 2 dedicated employees, boots on the
Just
ground
to
in China
handle.
who were there, yeah, all year
Yeah.
to make sure. So, like, we didn't have to handle all of the probably the things that you were coming up against that were difficult for you and made you decide that, like, you were too lazy to deal with those things. But yeah, it was really interesting to me, and I've seen similar stories either way, what you're describing and what I'm describing, where it just wasn't a fit in the US for this type of products or in China for this
Yeah.
type of product or Mexico or
Yeah.
wherever it is. Depending on your product, there's going to be some places that work and don't, but yeah, to Danon's point, just diversify, have some backup plans, do things a little bit differently, and like you said, it matters as well as, like, don't have all your eggs in one basket on
I was just
Amazon.
gonna say that.
Yeah, make sure
I
it's
was
it's
literally
spread
just gonna I was
across
waiting for you to
marketplaces.
stop talking so I could say that term, but now you said it, so I don't need to say it. But yeah, you're so right. The same goes with selling on Amazon. If you're building a brand, you need to have a Shopify store. And I realize that that is a completely different business model. On Amazon, your audience is already there. All you have to do is figure out how to attract that audience to your listing. On Shopify, you have to create your audience. It is a different business model. It doesn't have to be Shopify. It could be WooCommerce on WordPress or whatever, Wix, whatever. It doesn't really matter. All I'm saying is, like, you should own your own website. Um, and the same goes with your manufacturing. You If you only have one manufacturer in China, one option, you and that option I'll give you a perfect example. This is something a client of mine, this really sucked. They had $1 million of product in a warehouse that burned down. It was their manufacturer's warehouse. So it was their manufacturer. No alternative, lost $1 million in revenue. I don't know any further details than that, but I don't know if they had that any insurance on that because it was sitting in China.
Yeah, they technically, depending on what their terms are, they may not have even paid any money towards that. They may not have owned that product technically yet. But even if they didn't take a
Unlikely, but possible.
Even if they didn't, yeah, I guess. So I always, this is, you said something a minute ago that made me think of this, and I didn't get to it yet. But, Amazon native brands versus like brick and mortar native brands, and how different that mindset is and how different some of the processes are. This is why I get really excited talking about the expansion and moving beyond Amazon, because I got started in the retail space and learned e-commerce, but within a brand that was already established brick and mortar, and like with traditional thing. Like, I get so excited about talking to brands about opening a Shopify store and starting these things. So the point of that tangent, sorry, is that I've worked in businesses where we've had those great terms where we didn't own product yet, where we didn't pay anything until it shipped or even until 30 days after it
Yeah,
landed. But
yeah.
even if you don't take a financial hit, even if they had it insured, it doesn't matter. They're only getting a portion of that money. They're not getting their retail value of it. And now they're still having to wait to reproduce the product. So there's no great scenario when that happens. You're never fully protected when something like that happens.
No, it's true. It's true. Your profits aren't protected, just the cost of goods.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and then you still have to go through the whole hellhole that is dealing with insurance. All right. Well, cool. You know, I can people come to you for help to get off of Amazon to go into Shopify to build that stuff
Yeah.
they can?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I'm
shoot.
always interested in having those conversations, but then AO2 as an agency, we do Shopify support, we do Walmart, we do Google, Meta,
Oh,
um, we do some blog and email writing. So like basically like to say like across your e-commerce, kind of presence. If we
yeah.
don't do it ourselves, then certainly we have the partners in the space that we can make sure we're connecting you with to get that cohesive coverage. But yeah, omni-channel is part of our, main expertise, and there's a
Sweet.
couple of channels we touch.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to find out more about that, uh, should they reach out to you on LinkedIn or should they where should they go for that? Because full disclosure, I didn't even realize that you guys were omni-channel. I
So something we need to change,
perhaps
obviously.
well, I perhaps I should have looked at your website before I had you on. It's just you and I have been friends for years, and I just
Well, you
and it's
sat
kind
at our
of
booth at Prosper, and we had a banner up that had this information, but I mean,
I
I'm definitely not picking on you. I'm saying for like our perspective, that could be more clear. It should be something that you don't even have to notice that you're noticing.
fair enough.
Branding,
That's true.
branding.
Yeah, branding. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Jessica, your branding game is off. We found this live on the podcast. No,
Yep.
I I'm not going to give excuses. I should have known that. But whatever. You know what? Now
Now
we
you know.
know and that's great. It's probably a good place for me to end the podcast here because before I dig myself into any deeper holes here. Well, so AO2.com.
AO2management.com. We
Mm-hmm.
also have, if you wanted to reach out to sales directly to talk about this stuff, sales at AO2management.com. But I really love for people to reach out to me. I have no problem. Reach out to me
Yeah,
directly.
let's do
Let's
it.
have an initial conversation. That way, I can hand you over to sales with the right information about exactly what you need at this point in your journey.
Cool. All right. So then you heard it from the lady herself. Go to Jessica Wright, that's WRIGHT, on LinkedIn, and she will happily give you a quick consulting call and point you in the right direction. And another thing that I know about her is that if if her company is not the right fit for you, she's still going to help you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got plenty of agency friends, bigger, smaller, all across the board, and I know who are the nice people, the people you want to work with that are going to do
Yeah.
what your brand needs.
Yes, super important. There are definitely a lot of agencies that, unfortunately, but this is the case in anywhere really. There's a lot of
Hmm.
agencies that have no business being agencies. but you and I have been in the space long enough that we have friends that we trust that are going to do the job right. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I look forward to what's the next event for us?
For sure.
Accelerate.
Amazon Accelerate, for
Yeah.
sure. Possibly this year we'll be doing Walmart Let's Grow, which is
Oh, yeah.
the month before that, but details are still very much in the works. It just so happens it's in San Diego, which is where we're loosely based now that we're all remote, but we do still have, kind of a centralized unit there. So that might be it, but for sure Amazon Accelerate.
Cool. Well, then I will see you there.
Sounds good. See you in
All
Seattle.
right. See ya.
Bye.